business that can run without its leader and not just survive, but thrive. And that's what I coach my clients on, is how can you make your organization successful without you? When you do that, you have the ultimate power. You can call the shots. And I live that, right? I've lived that in my career. I've worked tirelessly to help my team get ready for life without me as their leader. And when they get to that point, again, it's given me options. It's allowed me to jump to the next challenge in my career. It's allowed them to make the next jump in their career. And to me, again, going back to what I started this conversation with, it's about helping people get where they want to go, right? Be successful in their role or beyond their role.
Welcome to Success Leaves Clues, the podcast where we interview business owners on how they built their businesses and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is David Swin, and I'm a business coach and the founder of Purple Circle, where we help business owners achieve their first 6-figure, 7-figure, and 8-figure year, all without sacrificing their quality of life. Before becoming a business coach and before founding Purple Circle, I started and scaled several 7- and 8-figure coaching businesses and have been a consultant at several businesses doing over $100 million each, including some that are publicly listed and doing over $1 billion each. In every episode of the podcast, you're going to learn lessons that took our guests years to learn, and you'll be able to learn that in minutes. No matter if you're a new business owner or an established business owner, every episode is going to give you the clues in order to elevate your business.
Welcome to Success Leaves Clues podcast. I'm Pedro, and today I'm joined by Steve DeVries, a former multi-site GM/COO who spent 20 plus years in the trenches of industrial and manufacturing leadership before building a 6-figure advisory and coaching practice dedicated to helping SMB manufacturing owners navigate growth, transition, and succession. Steve has partnered with founders, CEOs, and next-gen leaders across US, UK, and Canadian manufacturing businesses, bringing hands-on guidance through everything from ERP and digital transformation to lean upgrades and ownership transitions. His expertise is rooted in lived experience, having led turnarounds, managed P&L ownership, and operated as both a leader and advisor through 15 plus years of sustained growth in some of the most demanding industrial environments. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Thank you very much, Pedro. I appreciate you having me on.
It's great to have you, and you could be doing so many things, right, Steve? You could be a chef, you could be a plumber, but here you are. You're a coach. And so let's rewind a bit, go back to the origin story so you can walk us through why coaching and when did that started,
Why coaching? I suppose that it's something that I've done throughout my career, and I've gotten better at it as my career went along. But I think it comes down to one simple thing, right? I love business and I want to help people be successful in business. I fell in love with business when I had my first job. I was 14 years old and I was so interested in how all the different pieces of a business fit together. And then as I got into business leadership, it became, just a much bigger puzzle with lots more pieces to fit together. But there was always this one common theme, and that's, you can have a killer app, you can have a killer product, you can have a killer service, right? But it requires people in order to make it successful. And when you can align the success of the people in your organization with the goals of the organization, whether you're a manufacturing company or a nonprofit, you're going to have a successful entity. And why coaching? Because I'm helping people get where they want to go, and I'm helping an organization get where it wants to go. And so marrying those two philosophies together felt like a natural fit. So 5 years ago, when I started this kind of crazy journey, right? I've never been an entrepreneur. I've always run businesses for other people. It occurred to me that coaching offers the best of what I've enjoyed throughout my career, which is, again, helping businesses and people get where they want to go, and maybe less of the stuff that comes with, running a business. And so I gave it a shot.
Okay, let's backtrack a little. You told me 5 years ago you started a business, right? And there is a shift that happens. You brought it up, right? You were an employee, you were helping, managing, and all that, but then you turned yourself into an entrepreneur, right? And that's almost like an identity shift to a certain level. Like there is a leap of faith when you're joining a company. I worked at corporate, right? there is this big, well-oiled machine in the background running that sometimes we don't even realize it's there, but it's there doing a lot of things for us. But then the shift happens. You made the leap of faith, and now you're the owner, right? So can you walk us through when the leap of faith was made? How did that feel for you, right? Was it scary? Did you realize, okay, I'm going to have to wear a lot of hats? How that transition went for you?
So it was absolutely scary. And I'll explain why in a minute. But I've always wanted my own business. And when I was running businesses for corporations or private owners, I treated it as if it was my own business, but I always kind of knew that it wasn't. The thing is I never really knew what I could build a business around, right? So I think I always had that little yearning to have my own thing, right? I think the entrepreneurial spirit's been sort of simmering for a long time, if you will. And it just got to a point where, the last couple of roles that I had, they weren't great and I wanted something more. And that's when, Focal Point and coaching presented itself, right? But it was incredibly scary, right? Personally, one kid going into college when I started, right? That one's out of college now. The next one is going in, and financially speaking, to start a business, regardless of what it is, there's risk to be taken there. So that was scary. The wearing of multiple hats doesn't bother me at all. I mean, as a general manager, you are wearing multiple hats constantly, depending on the size of the business, or at least you're shifting your attention in multiple directions constantly. So that part didn't bother me. What my real hang up was, and I took a lot of months to explore coaching and Focal Point. And what scared the heck out of me the most was having to do my own business development. Early in my career, I was asked to, have an ops manager I was a general manager. My parent company said, your business is running great. We just want it to grow more. We want you to focus on business development. We'll give you an ops manager to keep the train on the tracks, but go out and do business development. And at that time in my career, I didn't want to do it. I fought it. I was upset about it. I didn't want to do it. And so I still had those scars, if you will, from my business development days, and this was 15 or more years ago when I was thinking about starting coaching. So that was the part that I was really hung up on. Can I do the business development? But here's the thing. I've always bet on myself in my career. I've won more than I've lost. I've lost my fair share, but I've won more than I've lost. So I said, you know what? Now's the time. Let's give it a try. Right? If it doesn't work out, I can go back and find another general manager type of role. So let's give this a shot. It's something I've always wanted to try, at least have my own business. Coaching just felt like a natural fit.
Interesting. Okay. Now, I know you're with Focal Point, right? Which is a franchise.
Yes.
But I want to understand one thing, because in the early days of coaching, sometimes we're testing waters, right? We're like trying to help everyone. We're trying to, serve as much people as we can to really understand who we can serve the best, right? I'm not sure if that started immediately with you. You got your ICP, your ideal client profile, dialed in, but eventually some people keep showing up at our door. We kind of attract a certain type of people. So what I want to understand is the evolution of who you serve and today who you actually help. Can you walk us through that?
So my ideal client profile was very much the types of businesses that I came from, right? So revenue of 20 million and under, right? OEMs, those are the types of businesses that I ran, along with, I did a heavy equipment dealership. That was the turnaround that you mentioned in that fantastic intro. But I understand blue collar types of businesses with white collar, management. And so my ideal client profile really was businesses who make things, right? So you could be an OEM, you could be a contract manufacturer. That's the ideal client profile. But when you get started, as well as I do, you'll take on all comers. So my very first client is a B2B service provider in the accounting field, not the ideal client profile, but we met in a networking group and she listened to me week in and week out talk about how Focal Point can change the trajectory of your business. And finally, one day she came to me, she said, I've been going through group coaching. I don't like it. I want one-on-one coaching. I want to have a plan. I want to know that there's something behind what we're working on. Do you have that? And I said, yes. She said, okay, let's get started. Like literally, that's how my first client landed. And she's still with me, right? So we started a couple of months after I opened for business and we meet every single week. She is not my ideal client profile. But what's interesting is I've taken a lot of my manufacturing background and applied it in different ways to her to her business, right? And it's all about optimization of your output. In this case, the output is professional service rather than a widget. But there's different ways you can look at a services business and think about it almost as if it were your manufacturing hours at that point, and you want production efficiency. So the journey from who I work with today versus who I can work with or who I have worked with, I've gotten into organizations that I never thought I'd be working with. One of my other longer running clients is a nonprofit that serves the homeless community and people with food insecurities. And they needed organizational leadership development. And I was introduced to the executive director, and I've worked with him and his staff for the last 3.5 years. Nowhere close to my ideal client profile, but I'm helping them run a better organization. Now, as far as the journey is concerned, I tend to spend more time at industry events where I know I'm going to meet people in that ideal client profile, the OEMs, the contract manufacturers, that sort of thing. But, as time, as you network, as you get exposed to new people, as you share your success stories, people latch onto that and they say, well, can you do that for me? And one of them is a B2C business. This company makes cornhole boards. The game cornhole, you beanbag toss and all that. He does this on the side. It's a B2C business. I'm a B2B guy, but he came to me and he said, I don't know how to run a business. Can you help me run my business? I said, sure, no problem. And I think you can have your ideal client profile as a coach. Maybe you're lucky enough to have all of your clients fit that ideal client profile. For me, that would be cool, but I'm also very happy working with businesses that are outside of that ICP. I do have some things that I won't do. I'm not going to work in a restaurant or with a restaurant. I'm probably not going to work with medical practices or law firms, right? I know people who are really good at that, because what they want is they want your expertise. They want your experience, not just lessons or theory. They want to know that your clients, that you have been in their shoes, that you have experience that they can draw from. And so that's why my ideal client profile is what it is, but I can often translate that into other areas.
Okay. Now let's do a game of pretend here. Let's pretend I'm your ideal client profile, right? I'm a owner or from a blue collar business, 20 million and under, OEM, whatever that looks like, your ICP, I'm your avatar. Okay. So first of all, you already browsed a little bit, but how would I be able to find you, right? Marketing wise, like how do I would be able to get my way into your stuff,
Well, I spend most of my time using LinkedIn to share with people kind of who I am and what I'm about. There's also a website. I don't know how many people find me there. Usually it's through networking, right? I get a lot of introductions through networking or attending industry events. I've sponsored some events where, I get to have a table and, you'll have 500-600 people in attendance. And oftentimes they're the business owners who fit my ideal client profile. So I oftentimes find them or they stumble into me at these types of events. That's really how they find me.
Okay. So I'm still that guy. Okay. I looked at your content on LinkedIn or even was referred to you. Some people told me, hey, you got to talk with Steve, right? Or eventually I went to one of those industry events. You had a table there like, hey, this guy seems cool. I resonated with what you got out there, basically. Okay. I'm like reaching out right now. We're going through the sales process. Let's put it like this. Let's say there is alignment to speed up a little. Okay. You see that you can help me. I see that you can help me, right? We're aligned. So can you walk me through a little peek behind the curtain? How does it look like to work with you? Okay. And the potential outcomes I can expect.
So if you're working with me, it means we're meeting every week, sometimes every other week. It depends on how quickly the client wants to get wherever it is that they want to go. Sometimes they're just feeling stuck, right? And I need to help them get unstuck. Sometimes they have growth goals, right? And they're not quite sure how to take the next step. They have a tiger by the tail and they just can't seem to, they feel out of control, right? So the outcomes are all about what is it that you want? Right. And everybody wants something a little bit different. And I don't coach to a program or a curriculum. I figure out what is it that you really, really want. And then I help you go get it. Right. For small business owners, they want freedom. They love their business, but they're so tied down by it. They would just love a little bit more freedom. In fact, my call earlier today was with a client that is in that exact situation right now. He's been in business 20 years. It's a successful business, but he is so entrenched in everything. And he doesn't know where to begin on in terms of extracting himself because his wife wants him to start thinking about retirement. This is a business in the UK. They have a dream of coming to the US and spending 6 months in the US. He's not there yet because he can't let the business run on its own without him. And that's what we're working on. I am helping him to find freedom from his own business. And that means different things to different people. Some people just want to take a week-long vacation and know that the building isn't going to burn down without them, right? Some of them want to be gone for 6 months. Some want to retire. Some want to pass it on to the next generation in their family. Some just want the freedom to go and get out of the day-to-day weeds and maybe go buy another business to bolt on. You know, all of those things require the same thing. And that's a business that can run without its leader and not just survive, but thrive. And that's what I coach my clients on is how can you make your organization successful without you? When you do that, you have the ultimate power. You can call the shots. And I live that, right? I've lived that in my career. I've worked tirelessly to help my team get ready for life without me as their leader. And when they get to that point, again, it's given me options. It's allowed me to jump to the next challenge in my career. It's allowed them to make the next jump in their career. And to me, again, going back to what I started this conversation with, it's about helping people get where they want to go, right? Be successful in their role or beyond their role, right? And using that to make the business successful. So I could share stories about that if you want, but what it's like to work with me, it's all about making a better organization. And every single week, we're going to work together tirelessly on what do we have to do next in order to develop the people in your organization and give you some freedom to do something different, higher value, or simply take a break.
Okay, interesting. Well, I'm still that guy in this scenario, and I'm trying to understand their point of view because whenever I'm thinking about manufacturing guys and all of that, I have one word that keeps popping out in my head, which is efficiency. Okay, they tend to be very data driven to make decisions. Yeah. Okay. And now you're adding an abstract component into my role. You're saying coaching. So how do you deliver or even show them the ROI of coaching, considering they're not as used to, potentially, to understand are they going to get out of it? You know what I mean? It's like, it's hard to pinpoint a number in coaching. It's like, oh, you're going to improve X, Y, and Z. I understand the strategy, the exit plan and all of that, but I'm still that guy. I'm like, hey, Steve, but I'm not sure, man. How do I even evaluate your work? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So when I hear you describe it in that scenario, you know, the ROI, for example, coaching is a very personal and an emotional scenario. It's not consulting. And this is something that I've come across since I started my practice. People use the idea of coaching and consulting interchangeably oftentimes. And I don't think that that's correct. You know, when you're a consultant, you're hired to solve a particular problem. It's going to cost X amount of money and you're going to get Y results, right? And that's all calculable and measurable. How do you put an ROI? How do you put a value on being able to take a vacation with your family without worrying about the business? Right now, if I'm going to come in there and wear an operations hat, I can help you come up with some KPIs or you know, calculate an ROI, and that's fine. It's a little bit different when you're coaching, right? So it goes back to, what do you want from the business? Do you want to take time off? Do you want to grow it by $1 million, right? Do you have a profitability challenge, right? We'll use all that data. So you wanted to peek behind the curtain. Here's where I'll start. I will go and get industry benchmarks for your type of business, your size business, your industry, and we'll do a run through on your P&L. Oftentimes business owners under 20 million in revenue, they're not the strongest when it comes to P&L management. Right? They don't know how to use it effectively. When you run a publicly traded or a division of a publicly traded company, like I have, you know how to use the P&L. You have to. You talk to it every single month. But most of these business owners don't have that background. So we'll start there and I'll say, okay, well, your net operating profit, you know, should be 5 points higher based on industry standards. So let's set a goal of hitting that within a certain amount of time. That's an easily calculable number, right? I can get you to that, you know, to that improved profit margin. No problem. If that's what you're looking for is more profit. I mean, who doesn't want more profit? But it might not be your pain point. Your pain point might still be, I need to take time off, right? What's your how do you calculate that? It's not measurable, right? Your mental health is not necessarily measurable. And I see that with my clients, right? So if I tell them, it'll cost you, some amount of money to work with me, and by the end of 1 year, you'll be able to take a week-long vacation, right? Or whatever the case may be. That's a tough note, that you have to decide for yourself. Is it worth Steve's coaching fees in order to get there? But if you want to grow your business by X percent, if you want to grow your bottom line by some percentage, if you think that you've got too many people in your organization and you need to figure out how to streamline it, those are all things that you can come up with metrics and KPIs for. And I can help you with that, right? But so can consultants, right? What a consultant isn't going to help you with, and what you may not be able to come up with that ROI on, is how do I lead an organization that is so strong and independent they don't necessarily have to operate with me at the helm every single day, right? And I think it's that value is in the eye of the beholder, right? Some people get it, some people want it, and others don't. And I really think that that's what differentiates a good coach from a consultant, right? And each has its place, by the way. I'm not trying to put down the idea of consulting, right? I'm not a consultant. I'm a coach, right? And I will call in consultants on behalf of my clients when they have a very specific problem that you can see and measure and define and have some kind of a measurable outcome. I would rather bring in a specialized consultant for a situation like that, right? And
Interesting.
yeah, that's just how I see, the needs of the business leader.
Okay, interesting. Now, I want to shift gears for a second, right? Talk a little bit about future, Steve. I'm curious about where you're taking all this, looking ahead, where do you see the business going? Are you thinking about scaling, hiring, or is there a next step you're excited about?
So for me, I definitely am not thinking about hiring, right? My scaling is all about my capacity. So recently I brought on a virtual assistant because I found that, with all of my networking activities, I have lost control of my network and staying in touch with people who I meet and really enjoy talking with and feeling a connection and potentially wanting to be able to help each other, identify new opportunities. But I've done so much networking, and there's a reason for that, but I've done so much networking that it's become unruly, my CRM or my database where I keep everybody's information. So I hired a virtual assistant, and recently I've started working with a LinkedIn expert just to manage the content and the posting for me, because I've found that the busier I get with clients, the harder it is to keep up with those things. And there are people out there who can do it for you, frankly, do it better than you can. And so that's the extent of growing my team. It's, using contractors, if you will, who have a domain expertise that can help me manage sort of the back end of the business. Where I want to grow it to, I want to be coaching clients Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, right? I want to have 2 to 3 in the morning, and I want to have 2 to 3 calls in the afternoon. And Mondays and Fridays are for networking, for development time, anything that I need to do in either to support my clients or to go find other clients or to help my networking partners find opportunities. That's what Mondays and Fridays are for. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. That I want to get to a full plate. So, in the next year or so, my goal is to have the equivalent of 12 full-time clients, where I've got 4 each day of those 3 days a week. That's the goal. And I'm close. I'm not there yet, but I'm close.
Okay, so mainly we're talking about a one-on-one practice, right?
Yes.
There is no group component, and your the goal is to get at capacity, working mainly with your ICP, and we'll go from there, right? Okay.
Correct.
Makes sense. And of course, whenever we're aiming towards the next chapter, always something we're refining in the present. You mentioned LinkedIn, right? Engagement and all that, the VA. So what are you currently trying to improve or tighten up in your business right now?
Well, so again, the staying in touch with my networking partners, number one. I started a networking group through an organization called Nexco. And, I'm really busy with that. And it occurred to me recently, and I've done a lot of networking up to this point. I've met a lot of great people, and I've had a lot of misses. We all do. If you network a lot, you take a lot of swings and misses. But what I'm trying to tighten up is staying in touch with the people that I can help, staying in touch with the people who might be able to help me, right? People who I find interesting, right? People who find me interesting, right? We connect, we click. That to me, that's been a great byproduct of coaching, is being exposed to so many different people who think differently than me, who have different, experiences than me. I can learn from them. They can learn from me. I'm enjoying coaching from that perspective, or the coaching business from that perspective. It's not just about me working with my clients in that way. And so the reason I want to keep it a solo practice is I want freedom. I want what I described, earlier that oftentimes my clients want. I want that for myself. And so I have found, after almost 5 years now, I'm actually going on vacation next week. And this is the first time that I've felt like I really needed a vacation. My activity level has been so high. And so what I really need to do is rebalance the activity level. And that's ultimately what I need to be working on for the next year or so, is just balancing out the activity level, making sure that everything I do brings value to me, and that I bring value to the people on the other side of the conversation. Because, as coaches, it's all about relationships. It's all about, I think, value to people. And if I'm not doing things that I value, then what the heck am I doing this for? I could go back and get a 9-to-5 job somewhere.
Okay. Now, shifting gears again for a second, I want to step into kind of a sci-fi thing right now. Okay. Let's pretend we do have a time machine in front of us. We're going to have 2 stops. Okay. The first stop, we're going back to the day you started a business, okay? And you can give yourself, past Steve, one piece of business advice you wish you knew back then, okay? 5 years ago. What would that be?
Go where your ideal clients are. And I can certainly expand on that. I mean, I spent a lot of time networking, trying to do business development in the wrong places. And it's because I was new to the business development side of things for coaching. And I was told you have to be part of a networking group. So I found one locally. I went to the one that met closest to my house, because I work out of my home, and I loved the people, and it was great, except for the fact that none of them work with my ideal client, right? And most of them weren't even B2B, right? I'm a B2B guy. A lot of these people are professionals, are B2C. And so, but you get close with them. I mean, I like building relationships and friendships and so forth. And I was adding value to them, right? I was doing a lot of different things for that networking group. But I was getting less in return, certainly not business referrals. No matter how much they liked me, no matter how much they trusted me, they just weren't in front of the right types of prospects for me. And I wasted a lot of time. Well, wasted is a strong word.
Right.
I built some great relationships, and I'm doing business personally with some of those folks today. And I'm really happy about that. But for my own business's development, I wasn't in the right place. Whatever your business development activity is when you're starting out, make sure you're in the right place. If you want to work with manufacturers, go to events where there's manufacturers, right? Or network with people who are directly working with your ideal client profile. It sounds so basic, right? But it's so easy to get swept up, in the networking world. I've said the word networking many times, and because it has dominated the earlier part of the growth of my business, but it hasn't always been efficient.
Okay. You gotta be a little bit more intentional. It sounds like that's the lesson. Like, understand a little bit more where you're placing yourself to network. Although networking is great, you just gotta pick the right rooms. Sounds like we're talking about
Correct.
that. Okay.
And that's exactly what we're talking about.
Okay. Now, second stop. Okay. You can go back to a certain point of time since you started the journey in your business that you felt, in a way, the most fulfilled. Okay. When you got your cup filled up, like you're like, oh, this is why I'm doing this. You know what I mean? You have one of those moments?
I've had several, but I'll share one from very recently, and I posted about it on LinkedIn. So I recently, quote unquote, graduated a client. So this is in that nonprofit organization that I mentioned earlier. So I've worked with the executive director there, but he also had me working with one of the directors who report to him. All management development, leadership development, organizational development. And so after a couple of years, right? So we could just bundle it under, executive coaching, right? Trying to develop this person into being less operationally minded and more executive minded. And how do you do that with someone who's in the trenches constantly and is in, quite frankly, a very personal type of industry? So 2 months ago, this person, her name is Hannah. Hannah came onto a call, and she had anticipated every single question that I was going to have, right? It was almost like, and she described it to me at the end of that call when I commented, I said, you had all the answers today. And she kept saying to myself, what would Steve ask? Or what would Steve do? Or what would Steve say? because we've been working together for a while. So she was starting to filter everything through our coaching time together. And she said, when I started doing that, I realized I already knew the answers to a lot of these questions. I just wasn't anticipating what the questions needed to be. I said, well, that's interesting. And I said, so, graduation day might be coming sooner than later. And so we kind of had a chuckle about that. We went through a couple more sessions and it was the same thing. And so I met with the executive director and his name's Mike. And I said, Mike, I think Hannah's ready to graduate. And he said, we were just talking about that. And I can see the confidence in her. I can see the execution coming from her. And she's like a different professional now. And she knows where her weak points are and she knows how to address them and get out in front of them when she finds herself in those situations. I've seen it and she's adjusted very, very well. And so, yeah, he says, I'm feeling pretty good about where she's at. So we just finished, we did her last session last week. Now, we may get together from time to time, to do some problem solving together. But that was it was a little bit bittersweet, right? Because no coach likes to, see a piece of revenue go away. But ultimately, it was way more satisfying to see the look on Hannah's face and to hear her just say, thank you, right? Like, I feel so much more confident in what I do. I feel like I'm ready to take the next step in my career whenever that opportunity comes up. That felt great. Right. From my perspective. And, there's longevity in coaching, as you probably know. You're not working with someone for a month or two and then sending them off. That's not how coaching works. Right. There's a relationship there. You get inside people's heads. You sort of live and die with some of their successes or failures and then help them, recover from that and move forward and on to the next step. It was amazing to have that conversation with Hannah and that realization that, yeah, she's ready. And I helped her get there. And so that was a really great moment. And I mean, I've had other situations. I've had clients, one of my clients is a soap manufacturing company, and he gave me a testimonial and it was very simple. He said, I used to drive to work thinking about what do I have to do today? He says, now when I drive to work, I'm thinking about what do I have to do tomorrow, next week, next month, next year. I'm way more strategic. And that to me, that was a person who was living in the business, fighting fires, playing whack-a-mole, if you know that reference.
Yeah.
And now he's controlling his business and it's growing because he's focused on the right things to grow the business, which was his goal. He wanted to go from 5 million pounds in revenue to 10 million pounds in revenue. And he said, when I get to 10 million pounds, I may entertain selling. Now that he's at 10 million and he sees how much more is out there and how much more control is happening in the business, he's not ready to move on from it. He wants more. He's excited about it, right? Those are some success stories that I've really enjoyed watching the success of my clients. They're doing a great job.
Yeah, I love that. Now, if someone listening wants to connect with you or follow your work, Steve, and we're going to have all the links in the description, but what's the best way for people to find you and connect with you?
LinkedIn 100%, right? I really don't, I have a website. To be quite honest, I don't do a ton with it. I think LinkedIn is a great place where you can see the types of things that someone posts and get a feel for who they are, what they're about, right? What it's going to be like to interact with them. And so I'm very, very current on LinkedIn.
Okay. There were certain parts of this chat that really stood out to me, really stayed with me. I would say, first of all, when you started your first job at 14-year-old, right, kid, you beat me for a year there. I started at 15. So it's interesting coming from that. And then we moved from talking to how scary it can be to open your own business. And you're very open about the feeling you had when you opened shop, right? And how that felt for you. So very vulnerable, very open about your own struggles too there. So kudos to you on that. Also, I felt it was really interesting. You mentioned a client that told you, like, I am not a client, that was a prospect at the time. She said something like, yeah, group coaching is not really for me. I'm more into one-on-one type of gal. Right. And I always think about that, like how different is group coaching? Because I've looked and I've seen people comparing very apples to bananas. That's my analogy here. I think they're just different. It's a different dynamic. So not really comparable, but I understand from the point of view of a client when they're like, this is more for me, not really the group setting, more of a one-on-one. And I always think that is very interesting because I've seen people thriving in the group coaching And I've seen
Yeah.
people shrinking in the one-on-ones. So it really is no cookie cutter, one size fits all. It really depends, right? That she was not into group coaching. That's totally fair, totally fine. So that's
Yeah.
one thing that I feel like it's interesting. And I would say last but not least, the ROI that we were talking about, very value based, right? And I worked in sales I was a high ticket sales closer for a business coach. And sometimes it's sell them what they want, give them what they need. Sometimes they don't even realize the possibilities because they're so into the weeds, right? They're putting fires out and you're like, you know what? It's possible for you to take a vacation. And when you're talking with someone who's like hitting 10 hours, 11-hour, 12-hour days at work, working at, weekends and all, it's hard to even grasp that possibility. But when you do that, and it sounds like you do, right? And people are like, oh my God, this is actually possible. And they start believing, you can see the shift. And it's hard to pinpoint a number to that. I think it's totally fair what you said. It's hard to tell someone, okay, how much is it worth it to you in dollar figures that you can actually step away for 6 months, like your client in the UK, right?
Mhm.
So this is just my long-winded way of saying, Steve, I appreciate what you do, and I appreciate you being here and sharing so openly today. Okay, it was great having you on.
It's my pleasure. I'd come back on anytime you want me.
That's it for this episode. This episode, as well as this podcast, was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help business owners elevate their business to 6, 7, and 8-figure years, all without burning out. If you're looking to grow your business, as well as get the time freedom that you are looking for, visit us at joinpurplecircle.com and see what we can do to help you and your business.